Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Stephen McCaskill, and I will be presenting to you on on Vaults and DAOs. Vaults and DAOs have been concepts that have been around for quite some time, and they're building on some of the DeFi products I've talked about in the past. They're really interesting in that the innovation that's happening in the space around managing vaults, setting up DAOs is growing at a very rapid pace. For me, this is something I've been hoping to see in the industry mature for many years. And to see it actually being possible and it actually evolving and maturing is something quite exciting to see. So if you don't know, Dasset is New Zealand's platform for digital assets. We have over 80 different cryptocurrencies trading on our platform with the best spreads in New Zealand and the best or lowest fees. So definitely check out our platform at dassetx.com. And part of the crypto journey is to talk about how to make crypto more useful in your lives, how to interact with crypto, and how can it bring more value to you other than just sitting in your account. And so this is where understanding what's happening in DeFi is really important if this is something that you want to understand where the market is going. Right now, the biggest challenges really come down to user interface. So when you are interacting with DeFi, it's not very user-friendly. There's a lot of tools that have come out over the last 2 years, but it's still quite challenging and quite costly if you're doing it on chains like Ethereum. So one of the core concepts that you need to understand when looking at DeFi are liquidity pools. Without liquidity pools, you can't really do much. They essentially enable services and products that you can interact with through software or smart contracts. And without the liquidity there, you won't be able to do what you want to do. For example, you need a liquidity pool to borrow against. So if you want to borrow a stablecoin, you need a pool of funds of stablecoin that you can borrow against. And so if you want to lend, then you need a pool. You need to provide collateral to this pool for other people to borrow against. If you want to trade using software, then you can process them directly from those smart contracts with the most liquidity. And so when we look at vaults, what we need to understand is that they are very specific in terms of what their functionality is. So they are used for a very specific purpose, and that purpose is set by the vision or rules behind the creator of the vault. So vaults can be very simple. They can be very complex, and they are starting to get more and more complex, especially as vaults interact with other vaults in the ecosystem. And so the management of vaults are a bit up in the air. And the reason why I say that is there's a lot of flexibility as to how the vaults are owned, how they're managed. And so you could potentially have a vault that is managed by one person or one wallet address, or you can have a vault managed by multiple people, or you can have the vault managed by other smart contracts or a mix. And so the management and control of vaults are very much flexible to the users that want to engage and involve themselves. And we'll go through some examples. So I'm going to talk a little bit about Yearn Finance and show you some specific examples. And so Yearn Finance was kind of the first ones to come out with vaults with strategies that essentially earn yield or earn income. And the reason why is because they employ multiple strategies to provide liquidity in an optimized way to maximize the yields. So back in the day, in early 2020, you could only put liquidity in 1 or 2 liquidity pools. And these liquidity pools had different yields. So one might have a yield of 20%, another one has yield of 25%. And so if you have stablecoin that you want to interact with these pools, then you would have to manually pull out the stablecoin from one pool or one smart contract and manually put it into another to maximize your returns. And so what these vaults do, some of them, is automate that process. So if one liquidity pool has a higher return than another liquidity pool, the vault will essentially rebalance the funds automatically to maximize your yield. And so these vaults are essentially specialized to automate your passive income from various crypto. So they can interact with multiple steps. So a vault can provide liquidity, borrow against that liquidity, deposit funds somewhere else, and then start yield farming. And so can have multiple steps as a strategy to return the yield. Now, depending on the who owns or who essentially has control over that vault will depend, we'll be able to say what the rules are, and will be essentially the ones that reap the benefits from those vaults. So starting to get quite interesting because some of these vaults can also hold and manage NFTs. And we're starting to see vaults mixing and matching. So here's an example of a vault that is utilizing Yearn. So Yearn Finance is a protocol on Ethereum, and they have multiple vault strategies. So one of their vault strategies is specifically for ETH. And when this vault strategy launched, the returns were something like 60% a year. Now the returns are something like 1% or less. So because the strategy has had so much liquidity pour in, the amount of return from this vault is much less. But basically how it works is you deposit ETH into the vault. The ETH is then sent to MakerDAO to essentially borrow a stablecoin. So the ETH is used as collateral to borrow DAI as a stablecoin. That stablecoin is then transferred into a second vault. And this second vault has its own vault strategy. So this vault strategy then deposits the DAI or the stablecoin as liquidity into a pool that's used for trading. And then those funds are essentially generate liquidity pool tokens, LP tokens, and those are essentially deposited into a farm to yield a curve. In addition to that, this vault then sells the curve tokens back to ETH, which essentially is the return. So when you pull your funds out of this vault, you are going to pull out ETH. So if you deposit 1 ETH, then you would withdraw 1 ETH. And I should say you also will earn income for essentially for utilizing for the vault to essentially put the ETH to work. So this is all done in an automated process. So you don't have to deal with moving, doing the lending and the borrowing, from moving the funds into the second vault to provide it to a liquidity pool. So all of that is done through smart contracts. Now, of course, there are some risks. For example, this vault is borrowing and lending funds. So the vault could end up having to get a margin call from MakerDAO essentially to top up funds. This would require them to, for example, if the ETH price starts dropping, then the ETH would essentially need, the smart contract would essentially need more Ethereum or ETH as collateral to maintain those loans. And so if more ETH is not deposited, then that contract can essentially liquidate the ETH. So there are some risks involved in some of these vaults, especially when you start building the strategies on top of each other. So governance. So this is where it's a bit open for, I guess, for interpretation, open to potential ideas, because it's evolving and evolving very quickly. So some of it is done in a decentralized way, some of it is done in a centralized way, and it's kind of a spectrum. So it could be done in a very manual and centralized way where one person has control or access to the vault, and that person has been entrusted with access to the vault, and it could just be managed by that one person, or the governance could be a group of people. Could be 1, 10, 1,000, 100,000 people that participate. And they can participate with a governance token where the token is either fungible or non-fungible with different mechanics. Like the token can be used for voting, where one token represents one vote. And the voting can vary from what the strategy of the vault should be, what the distribution of the funds should be, and everything in between. This is still evolving. There was an exploit in a smart contract in the last couple of weeks where a proposal was made to a DAO that essentially gave control over the vault funds to one bad actor, and that bad actor essentially drained the vault. And so this is where we're still trying to identify the right best practices. The best practices around these governance systems are evolving very rapidly, and in what I would consider a positive direction. So an example of a vault that is tied more towards a community or a utility with a very specific purpose would be the Constitution Dao. So the Constitution Dao was a DAO that launched last year, and its main focus was to raise enough funds to essentially participate in an auction for a document, a government written document, which is the US Constitution. And so they, there's certain rules in place, like which person would actually go to go to the auction and make the bids on behalf of the DAO. So that's where you see there needs to be trust in one person or centralized party to actually follow through with the rules of the DAO. You could even say that each DAO has its own constitution in a way. And so the DAO raised $30 million in ETH, the auction happened and somebody outbid them. So they were unable to collect enough funds to buy the Constitution. And what ended up with was a closure of the DAO. So the people who bought the governance tokens that managed the vault funds could essentially take those governance tokens and redeem them for the ETH that was raised minus the gas fees. So if you were involved in this DAO, then you would have lost some money with the gas fees, but the management of the funds were done in a partially automated, partially centralized way. So it's a really interesting real world example. And you're starting to see more of these DAOs popping up. So a lot of them are charity driven or very specific to a specific purpose. Like somebody recently launched a Julian Assange DAO, and I believe they raised about $30 million, maybe more, to help the founder of WikiLeaks with, I don't know, whatever legal issues he has. And so, so it's very specific purposes for these vaults. What I'm going to do is show some demos. Does anyone have any questions about vaults? Okay, so we have Yearn Finance here. I've already connected a wallet to the application. Yearn Finance is a protocol on the Ethereum network that has a number of vault strategies. So that's what I wanted to show you, how some of these vault strategies work and how you can interact with them. So, this is no endorsement of the tools and not an endorsement of Yearn Finance, but more a demo or an example of some of the things that you can do on the Ethereum network. So I do have a wallet here, has some ETH in the wallet. And so I was thinking of showing a live example where maybe we can engage with some of these vaults. So a lot of these vaults, they'll all tell you their strategy, how they work, but then you will need to essentially acquire the asset to deposit into the vault. So this is just a random one. And what this does is deposits liquidity into a trading, a decentralized exchange. So Curve is a decentralized exchange that allows people to trade different assets. So this vault requires you to purchase, you have to essentially have ETH and Curve. So you have to do research on Curve, see if you like that asset. Then you'd have to have an equal amount of ETH and an ETH as you do Curve. So you essentially need $100 in ETH, $100 in Curve to engage in the Curve ETH liquidity pool. From there, by putting it into this vault, they are essentially managing the funds in the liquidity pool for you. So if, for example, the yield drops, they might pull it out. Depending on the direct strategy behind the scenes, they may add additional vaults, or they might add additional liquidity pool to this vault to essentially automate the transfer of funds from one pool to another. So essentially, I'd have to buy Curve and ETH to deposit into this vault. So I'm not going to do that. But here are a couple that you only need to deposit one asset in. And so, for example, This one is for Sushi. Sushi is a decentralized exchange. You can see there's about $2.6 million in assets in this vault, and the current return is 22%. So if I was a fan of the Sushi token, if I was long on Sushi, the decentralized exchange, I'm holding Sushi, then I might go and deposit it into this vault to earn this variable APY. Now, again, this is the rate for today. Tomorrow, it might be half this. You know, in a few months, it might be 1 or 2%. But this is essentially what, and they tell you what they're doing. So they're investing Sushi into a what they call the League DAO. And I assume League DAO is something like a decentralized exchange. So you can do some due diligence on League DAO, because you are essentially depositing into their smart contracts. You know, the governance, the people behind the governance of Yearn will have done due diligence on this. But it's still, you know, you also would want to do due diligence yourself, because they're essentially depositing into another smart contract, which could have its own vulnerabilities. So as you can see, they're depositing in here, which is earning 14.65%. So they might be doing something like reinvesting the Sushi tokens to get that additional yield, because you know, here you see it's 22.25%. So they might be putting it into a couple of different liquidity pools. Like they could be earning League and then using another, for example, Sushi League liquidity pool to earn additional yield. So they could be utilizing a couple of different liquidity pools to get that return. So I'm not going to deposit Sushi, because the first thing I have to do is actually buy some, and then I'd have to approve it. The transaction fees on Ethereum, although they're lower right now, it costs me about $150 to $200 to actually interact with these smart contracts, and then I'd have to pull out the funds. So yeah, right now approving is about $10. Buying Sushi is about $50, and those on-chain fees add up. So unless anyone wants to see the demo of me depositing Sushi into this vault, I've done deposits into vaults in the past on chain, so I will skip that demo. Okay, so couple questions. What wallet have you connected to Yearn? So the wallet is MetaMask. The MetaMask wallet is a very popular Web3 wallet that connects. I don't know if you can see the MetaMask wallet being popped up right now. Like you can see the ETH in the wallet address. I don't know if the screen share shows the MetaMask wallet right now, but it's a bit tricky, because although I use MetaMask, I do believe that MetaMask could be that MySpace of services, where it's still very clunky, still challenging to use, especially if you're switching to different networks, bridging. MetaMask doesn't make it that easy. It has the network effect because so many people use it and it's so integrated. But I am really looking forward to seeing better wallets than MetaMask in the near future. Yeah, so right now you can see it's my wallet is connected. I'm connected through MetaMask. You can use a few others. Normally I recommend, or I use Trezor with MetaMask. So I use a hardware wallet connected to MetaMask. So somebody was asking about deposits and withdrawals. So deposits and withdrawals have different network confirmation times. So I believe we have the network confirmation times on our fees page. And so, for example, Bitcoin deposit takes 3 confirmations, which is an average of 10 minutes per confirmation. But sometimes it takes Bitcoin, 30 minutes to an hour for 1 confirmation. So a Bitcoin deposit will take anywhere from 30 minutes to a couple hours. And then the question, why can't we choose the network fee? So that's a really great question. So we are partner with Bittrex. So part of our wallet infrastructure is Bittrex's wallet infrastructure. And so they maintain the fees for broadcasting transactions to the relevant networks. And they essentially have a very specific formula for their fees. They base it on the network congestion over the last, essentially the last week. So if network congestion has been really high over the last week, then the fees on chain will be a lot higher. They essentially manage all the fees themselves through a centralized node. And so they might batch your transaction with many other transactions and send it out all together. And they essentially have a policy of guaranteeing the transaction to be sent. So if you withdraw crypto, if you withdraw Ethereum from Dasset, the goal is to guarantee that that transaction will occur, and that transaction will occur very quickly. And so unfortunately, we don't have a ability to modify fees to have slower transactions off our exchange. Right now, it's not something that we've really discussed with Bittrex, but something that we are working towards is multi-chain support. So you can withdraw Tether from Tron, Bitcoin, ETH, or a layer 2 like Matic. And so we're adding that type of support so you can withdraw to multiple chains, which may have lower fees than Ethereum. Yep, so another question, so that was specific to Dasset. This next one is specific to Vaults. As liquidity improves for different liquidity pools for different vaults, then the returns will decline. And so that really depends on the strategy for the vault. Does the, once the vault returns reach a certain threshold, like 5%, do the vault governance holders have an option or ability to vote on a new strategy or change the strategy? There are different mechanics where, and these mechanics are compounding or building on top of each other. But we've very much seen that most of the vaults over time drop in yield because there's enough liquidity in there to serve their purpose. It's essentially knowledge is power. So somebody may have found a new strategy before everyone else, and they've been able to acquire this large yield. But as more and more people discover it, that arbitrage or that opportunity lowers in value as more people pile in. And so, so usually, you can expect anywhere from 1 to 10%, depending on the vault strategy and the assets that are underlying it. A lot of the dollar or stablecoin vaults will tend to have higher yields because more people are borrowing stablecoin. And it changes, you know, with the market being a little bit more bearish. A lot less people are borrowing because a lot less people are gambling. So a lot less people are trying to go long or essentially borrow dollars to buy more crypto. And so the interest rates for stable coins have declined. That's at least one reason why. So Constitution Dao, so this is something that was popular last year. They raised $30 million. And they, what I discovered was they actually use this, this platform called Juicebox. So this Juicebox platform allows you to create, is essentially a drop-down template builder that essentially uses smart contracts on the Ethereum blockchain for you to customize your own DAO, your own project. And so the Constitution DAO, they didn't even use their own custom smart contracts. They used smart contracts that already existed out there. And the amount of customization that already exists is incredible. So you can customize the issuance of the governance tokens, how many governance tokens there are, what the governance tokens will get you in terms of ownership or voting. It enables you to essentially create your own vaults where excess funds are distributed on a certain period to the token holders. So this can all be done without any programming. So I couldn't believe that this exists already. And it was used to create a $30 million DAO. Unfortunately, they didn't raise enough, but you can look at the smart contract on chain. So you can see all the transactions that have happened. You can see right now that out of the $30 million, there's $1.9 million in tokens left in the vault. So you can assume that some people have forgotten about their tokens, or they've been lazy and they haven't redeemed the ETH that they essentially deposited. So somebody can essentially use some of these Constitution tokens, redeem them for ETH to get the Ethereum that was put into the vault. And so because the vision of the vault failed, the results or conclusion was paying everyone back. And so you can see that people have been redeeming their ETH or turning in their tokens back for ETH. And so yeah, this is the big thing that we're seeing is people, especially projects now with things like NFTs, where the NFT holders are managing governance, where one NFT represents one vote. There might be a council where 10 NFTs have special voting rights, where each one of those special voting right NFTs carry 100 votes each. So you might have a council that manages the day-to-day. You might have token holders that vote once a year. They might vote by proxy. The rules are endless in terms of what's programmable now. And the vision will really vary. So some of the latest ones that I've seen are DAOs, where the funds have been used to invest in cryptocurrency mining. So they are buying hardware to buy or to mine Bitcoin and Ethereum, and the proceeds from the Bitcoin or Ethereum are put back into the vault for the vault holders to decide on the distribution or how those funds are going to be reinvested. And so for that project, the token holders voted to reinvest as much ETH as possible into more hardware for the next 6 months so that they can maximize their return in the next 2 years. So really interesting decisions because it's really up to the community to decide proposals to maximize the value of those vaults. So I'll stop there, see if anyone has an example that they want to see, if they have any questions, any ideas. What I'd really like to see is a lot more governance and creation of insurance vaults, insurance DAOs, the use of this technology to create new products and services that help manage funds for people that are all over the world. So we don't have to have companies that are restricted to one jurisdiction or services that are stuck to one country. I think that the next phase is going to be things like insurance DAOs, where people can provide collateral to insurance funds, where people can take out customized insurance, and it'll be tied to vaults that earn yield for people who are buying policies or participating in those insurance funds. So I'd love to see a lot more of that evolve over the next year. And it's something that we're very slowly starting to see. So any ideas that anyone has, or comments or questions? No questions. So if no one has any questions, then I will call it. Something else I didn't really touch on is that some vaults can hold NFTs. So because NFTs give different access, NFTs can be put up for collateral, they can be borrowed or lent against, they can be fractionalized. We are seeing communities of people, of DAOs, holding NFTs. And so this gives people the ability to essentially own a portion of physical art. So you can turn something like the Mona Lisa into an NFT that can be fractionalized, that can be in a vault that's partly owned by 1 million different people. So really exciting stuff that's happening. So question, can we do any of this through Dasset? Great question. You can get started with it through Dasset. So by essentially purchasing an asset like Ethereum or Avalanche with New Zealand dollars, you can then interact with these vaults. So because these vaults are decentralized, they're essentially software where you need to interact with them, where you own the private key yourself. This is where it becomes a little bit difficult to do it directly from your Dasset account, because we're essentially managing the private key with very complicated infrastructure. So the way that we manage customer funds makes it very difficult for us to interact with these smart contracts directly. And so it's a lot easier to move the funds into a private key that you have control or management over, and then you can engage with these vaults. And so, so Dasset's kind of like that first step, where once you're able to acquire the asset through Dasset, then you can you put the funds to work by putting them into a wallet that you have control over, and then interacting with these smart contracts. If you ever have a question or want a little bit more hands-on, feel free to schedule a time with our support to come into our office, because we are happy to walk you through it step by step. Again, we don't endorse these contracts in the software directly ourselves. because we essentially can't take liability if there's an exploit in a smart contract somewhere, but we can show you what some of our staff are doing in their personal time, in their free time. So you can kind of see the tools that we're using in crypto without a specific endorsement, because we essentially can't take liability for funds that you put into your own possession, for example. Any other questions? Last questions? If not, thank you everyone for being here, and have a great rest of the day.